Good day, this is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Ontario, Canada for Reason to Resist on July 4th, 2025. Today we're very pleased to be joined again by Margaret Kimberly. Margaret is executive editor and senior columnist of the Black Agenda Report and the current host of the Black Agenda podcast. Her book, Prejudential, Black America and the Presidents, was published in 2020. Last May, Margaret briefed the UN Security Council on the dangers of weapons transfers to Ukraine. She's a recipient of the Serena Shim Award for Uncompromising Integrity in Journalism and the Women's Institute for Freedom of the Press 2021 Women in Media Award. Margaret, you were kind enough to agree to do this from New York City on July 4th. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I'll just start with the shameless plug for my book, Prejudential. Interesting book for July 4th. A weird day mostly for Black people. It's a very strange day because it's a federal holiday. Nobody goes to work. Banks are closed. Everything's closed. People have cookouts, have fun. But there's this foundational story of the United States, which was all a lie. We were taught in school, I think kids are still being taught, these founding fathers, they were chafing under British tyranny. And they had to strike out on their own to be independent. But the reality, actually, Canada's part of the story, that after the 7 Years' War, we were taught the French and Indian War. The British made deals with Canada, especially with the French, the settlers would not encroach any further west than the Appalachian Mountains, because that was Canadian territory, some of the states of the upper Midwest, and British territory is what I mean. But and so Canada plays a part in this tale. We're not taught any of that. This French and Indian War story is separated completely. And the settlers were told, well, you can't go any further west because we cut this deal. And they were like, no, we want it all. We want the whole thing. We want to go as far west as we can. We want to steal Indian land. We want to spread slavery. And so, no. And they were also afraid that the British might end the slave trade. So, and another important thing, the British did promise and did as much as they could provide freedom for enslaved people who fought with them. That is something I did not know until I was an adult. So it's a nice day, and there are fireworks and everything. Who knows? If somebody tells me they're cooking out, I might go. But yes, that's the story of July 4th, Independence Day.
Yeah, and perhaps the supreme irony, Margaret, is that while Americans are asked to celebrate their independence from a foreign monarchy, their government continues to deprive peoples around the world of their independence from the Anglo-American Empire and, peoples at home, marginalized groups and oppressed groups, including, of course, African Americans. So that's one of the painful ironies, I imagine, for many Americans today.
It is. It's an irony. I think many people do think about these contradictions, but it's hard, I think, for most people to just separate themselves completely. So they will say, well, I'm not patriotic, but I'm going to go to the cookout, or I'm going to go visit family, or my family's visit. It's a thing. It's a big thing, and one that's hard to ignore. But I appreciate when people do stop and think. And I know in Canada, you just had Canada Day, July 1, which provides similar contradictions for people who think about these things, think about settler colonialism. But I would just ask people to make that effort, not to just put your blinders on and shrug your shoulders and say, well, it's old, it has nothing to do with me now. Because it does have something to do with you now.
Not too many Americans know about Canada Day. That's impressive. As a matter of fact, I held a live stream on Canada Day with a fellow Canadian, Laith Marouf, who now lives in Beirut, and we we started by spending the first 10 or 15 minutes of that discussion telling people how we really feel about this. And then it's not one that we celebrate at all, particularly given Canada's support for the genocide going on in Gaza at the moment.
Yep. Well, you start with genocide, I guess you can stick with it a couple hundred years, right?
Correct. Long tradition in the Anglo-American sphere, that's for sure. So I'd like to begin by asking you about this strangely named legislation, the Big Beautiful Bill, that Donald Trump has been raving about for so many weeks. The U.S. House of Representatives passed this signature Trumpian legislation yesterday, I understand. And that passage by the House followed a marathon session of the U.S. Senate, which narrowly approved Trump's massive bill. So it seems that this behemoth is set to become law. Margaret, in your opinion, what are the most important aspects of this legislation in the form in which it's passed in the Senate and the House? And how in particular do you think this legislation is going to impact working Americans and the poor?
Well, it enshrines something that's been, this big, beautiful bill. It is very Trumpian, I think he was, Biden was supposed to pass something called Build Back Better, which he failed to do because the oligarchs didn't want it, just to cut to the chase. And so, of course, he had to use alliteration too and, use the letter B. So, it's like big, beautiful. It is Trumpian. It's, nobody else would call a major bill a big and beautiful. But what it does is it enshrines tax cuts for the rich. Now, I want to say something about, you have to be careful talking about Trump. It's easy to see him as this singularly bad figure because he is singularly bad in so many ways. But the first big tax cut was George W. Bush. And we were told it was temporary. And lo and behold, it was renewed every year. Obama becomes president. Democrats have majorities. Was it renewed? Yes. This temporary tax cut became permanent. So rich people get another tax cut, but I just want to emphasize Democrats have done the same thing. So working people will get a tiny tax cut. Poor people just get screwed, just to put it bluntly. There are big cuts in social programs, the Medicaid program, the health insurance program for low-income people. Huge cuts. They have these I don't know who they think is on Medicaid, but people will have to work or prove they can't work. Who do you think is on Medicaid? It's a lot of people who are disabled. There are people actually who work who are still on Medicaid. Their incomes are so low, they qualify. For example, people who work for Walmart, most of them qualify for Medicaid. So, Walmart double dips. They always build new stores with tax abatements. And then they hire people who they pay them so little, they have to get help from the government. So they're working people who work in fast food restaurants, all kinds of jobs that are low wage, who get Medicaid. So a lot of Medicaid recipients are workers. But there are people on Medicaid in nursing homes. There are people who, both my parents, when they passed away, were in nursing homes. That's very common for elderly people at the end of their lives. People who need home health care, all kinds of things. So Medicaid's going to be cut. People are going to be kicked off. But it's not the first time they cut Medicaid and kicked people off. There was an expansion of programs during the COVID pandemic, and people were encouraged to get Medicaid. So it was expanded, and then what happened? They called it the unwinding, and then they were kicked off. So this is not that when Obama was president, there were Medicaid cuts. So this is not the first time this has happened. One of the worst things.
You also commented on social media, if I recall correctly, that under Biden, a lot of people lost Medicaid.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to. Yeah, the unwinding of these programs, and Biden, and the Democrats were like, well, we lost our majority in the House. Sorry, too bad. There's not much we can do. They didn't put up a fight. They didn't rail against the Republicans. They just let it because it's part of the game. It's part of the political game. But one of the worst things is the increase in funding for ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. Trump is maniacal about deporting people, mass deportations. They are snatching people literally off the streets. They are snatching up some U.S. citizens too, but it's going to grow by, I think, from 2 billion to 40 billion, at some bizarre number. I apologize for not having the exact number, but it's a huge increase for immigration enforcement. And that's going to mean policing of communities, of immigrant communities, of other communities. And these ICE facilities, these immigration detention centers, these are mostly contracted to private companies. So you have, once again, law enforcement being used, or the guise of law enforcement being used to make corporations richer. So it is absolutely terrible. But there are other things. There's a provision that makes it illegal for states to regulate AI. People are, for many reasons, uncomfortable with artificial intelligence. The people want to regulate these data centers, which take a lot of energy, which take a lot of water, that pollute. But anything to do with AI, states will not have the right to regulate. So, and there are all kinds of provisions. I mean, it's a 900-page bill, which is typical for budget bills in the United States. But those are the big parameters. Further increases in the defense budget. I shouldn't call it defense, the military budget, right? Because we don't want to give the impression that anything's actually being defended. It was 800 billion. Now it's 900 billion. It's almost $1 trillion. It was already most of the federal spending in the military budget. So the bad things have gotten worse. The people are being hurt. And as usual, you saw people claiming they didn't like the bill, but they'd vote for it anyway. And everyone focuses on the Republicans. They just give in to Trump. They said they didn't like it, but voted for it anyway. I've seen this before, though. I'm thinking about, there's a senator who was criticizing Israel, and it was uncharacteristic for Senator Van Hollen. And he went to Gaza, and he was very, making really important statements about the genocide going on. And then when Biden asked for more money for Israel, he voted yes.
Wow. There was a new report from Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy said this legislation could modestly boost GDP and investment over time, but would seriously increase the national debt, pushing the debt to GDP ratio from 98% to 122%. And as someone who covered extensively the financial crisis in Greece and the austerity imposed upon Greece, the IMF and the ECB and the European Commission were all saying that debt levels in that range, you're starting to approach unsustainability of debt. I thought that these Republicans were supposed to be fiscally responsible, Margaret. Was there any meaningful opposition within the Republican contingent in the Senate or the House to the disastrous impacts on the national debt of this legislation?
Initially, because that's supposed to be their thing, being fiscal conservatives, and this is still too much money. It's too big. It's not conservative enough, blah, blah, blah. But they all voted for it. So Trump has this singular hold on his party, but it's not unique to him. I want to also repeat what I was saying, where people just give in. Congress has, and it's been going on for a long time, Congress has abdicated its responsibility with these presidents. And if their party is in, they go along with any number of things. I remember a couple of years ago, and it wasn't about the budget. It was about Ukraine. There were a group of Democratic members of Congress who wrote a letter to Biden about seeking peace in Ukraine. And it was fence straddling. It was, yeah, Russia's evil, unprovoked attack, blah, blah, but let's talk about peace. So they released this letter. Less than 24 hours later, they clearly got a call from the White House and the State Department. They were like, oh, sorry, we were premature releasing this letter. We were just discussing it among ourselves. We didn't really mean to do it. I mean, they got beaten up and they repudiated themselves in less than a day. So this is the sort of thing that has been going on for a long time. And I think it happens because they don't represent the people. And Democrats don't want Congress to represent the people. So if I was thinking just off the top of my head, if I really was in opposition, true opposition, what would I do to keep this bill from becoming law? And I thought, Democratic members of Congress could have gone to Republican districts and just told people, you're getting kicked off of Medicaid, right? I mean, if this passes, you're not going to have any health care. You know that, right? Something like that. But they don't want to fight him because when they're in, they want to be able to do the same thing. They don't want to hear from the public. They have their, the rich people who run these parties to answer to. So they don't fight. Rhetorically, they'll say Trump is terrible. Well, but they don't use any power that they have they have the bully pulpit. They have the power to tell the public what is happening, to tell the public what they want to do. But that means when they're in, people could be activated against them and would speak up to them. So they don't want that. And so we see this, a circus of fake democracy where neither party wants to hear from, they do not want to hear from the people. They do not want to hear what we want. And that is how they get away with taking things from us, giving to defense contractors. And this will go on and on and on until or unless we actually have a real democracy.
Well, since we're on the subject of people-oriented politics, I wanted to ask you about a very important municipal political contest, the one happening in your neck of the woods, New York City. And this candidate, the surprise candidate who has emerged as the Democratic nominee, his name is Zohran, I may be mispronouncing it, Zohran Mamdani. This intriguing candidate identifies as a democratic socialist, which, of course, is the term that Bernie Sanders has used to describe himself for many years. What is your assessment of his actual political orientation, Margaret? Do you think that at least the platform that he has run upon up until now in this race, do you think it can fairly be described as socialist?
No, not socialist. He's a left Democrat. And meaning he wants the government to help the public and to improve our quality of life, which I'm in favor of. But politics has moved so far to the right in the United States. People are calling him a communist. Trump went on this rant. If he's elected mayor, I'll take federal money from New York. He should be deported. He's only been a citizen a short time. He's a green card holder most of his life, and I believe has been a citizen only for 7 years, which I don't care. I don't care at all.
Trump actually called for his deportation?
Oh, yes. Other Republicans have. Well, this is, in this crazy country we live in, there are now, there's now a push to denaturalize those people who have citizenship from naturalization, to look at their public statements. I know it is actually true. If you are, for example, a member of a communist party anywhere in the world, you cannot become a U.S. citizen, for example. And people are saying, well, he's a communist sympathizer. And I don't even know what communist sympathizer is. He says the buses should be free. And that qualifies as, being a communist. being a communist. In that case, 90% of New York is a communist. I'd be like, sure, give me my free bus ride, which I know is not true. We had that during COVID, by the way. The buses were free for about a year. But
Yeah.
so yeah, they should take his citizenship. He should be deported. The city should be deprived of federal funding. I mean, people are losing it over some very modest proposals, or people focus. For example, he said, maybe the city of New York can run some grocery stores because we have what are called food deserts. They're neighborhoods that don't have a big selection of healthy food. And he said maybe the city could run grocery stores. Sounds okay to me. What do people say? The government can't do anything right. The government, it'll be like the DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles. And people say, do you want the grocery store to be like the DMV? First of all, in New York, the DMV has improved a lot and it's fine. So it's like this, that comparison might have scared people 20 years ago. But now it's very efficient and like other, it just kills me how the U.S. government or state and city governments, New York City has a hospital system, has a public university system. I mean, the government fixes the streets, delivers the mail, and suddenly the government can't run a grocery store. Of course they could, but it's bigger than those simplistic and stupid comments. The bigger problem is the Democratic Party in New York City, or in the rest of the world. New York is the money capital of the country, and there are a lot of billionaires here, and they, as the billionaires everywhere else, they want to pick who is going to be in office. They all backed Andrew Cuomo, the former governor, who left office under a scandal, sexual harassment scandal, also a scandal about COVID, and the fact that he hid so many, especially senior citizens, were dying in nursing homes. That was a cover-up. So he left in disgrace a couple of years ago. Then he wants to come back. He sees his opportunity. The rich people do give him a lot of money, but he loses. Now there's a billionaire named Bill Ackman, a truly horrible man, who publicly said yesterday they're going to back, he and I guess the rest of his rich buddies are going to back the current mayor, Eric Adams. Now, Adams is a Democrat, but he has been tainted by scandal. Many people who work for him have been indicted. He was indicted, but Trump interceded on his behalf and got the U.S. attorney to dismiss the case against him. So he stayed out of the Democratic.
I'm sorry. I've seen, by the way, I just want to interject a lot of crazy pro-Israel commentary from Bill Ackman on social media. And if I'm not mistaken, Eric Adams is also fanatically pro-Israel. Is that?
Of course. Well, that's how you get elected in New York City. Yeah. Even Mamdani is the only one. I mean, he was forced to say, yes, Israel has a right to exist. But this, Zionist war propaganda, he's not saying it. And that makes him the enemy of these people. Ackman is not just active on social media. He got the president of Harvard fired. He was one of the people behind that whole scheme. The then president of Harvard and other university presidents it was a setup. They were set up by Congress and, asked very leading questions. If somebody says they don't like Israel, are you going to expel them? And unless they said, yes, I would, they were all tainted as anti-Semites. Ackman was one of the leaders who got her fired. So he's very politically active, very public about his activism. And he has announced, and I'm not surprised because they gave Cuomo all millions of dollars and he lost. So that means he's dead to them. So he's going to back Adams, who because of his legal trouble didn't run in the primary, but he is on the ballot as an independent. Cuomo's still on the ballot, but I think he's dead. The rich people already said they're not going to back him again. So, and that was all he had, name recognition and money. So some of the unions and others who had endorsed Cuomo are now endorsing Mamdani. But I think the most important thing is that the politics in the U.S. is so far to the right, even modest changes are demonized and smeared as being unworkable, as being impossible, as being communist, which is still like the, pejorative of all pejoratives in this country. But I think Mamdani can win. Now, Adams, I think, he's the second black mayor of New York City. I think he may get most of the black vote. That's a vote Mamdani did not get. I think black people are risk averse politically and don't like to vote for people they don't know. Also, Cuomo has name recognition. And there are people who vote who aren't really politically engaged, and they're just like, oh, yeah, his father was governor. I know the name Cuomo. And so, just in kind of an inertia. So will Adams get the black vote, those votes that Cuomo's got? Adams is conservative. Will the white conservatives in the city? Yes, they will vote for him and not for Mamdani. Can Mamdani chip away at any of that and go beyond the youthful vote that he got in the primary? So I'm not sure, frankly, what's going to happen. I can see Mamdani winning or Adams winning.
So a new poll, according to the New York Post, a new poll by American Pulse shows Mamdani with 35% support of general election voters. Cuomo's at 29. The Republican Curtis Silva is at 16, and Adams is at 14%. So if you combine, the Republican Cuomo and Adams into one voting block, Mamdani would lose. Now, something like this happened in 2020 in the presidential race in the Democratic Party when Sanders, relatively early in the nomination contest, was in the lead. Mm-hmm. And everybody, reportedly, as I recall, at sort of the insistence or request of Obama, bailed out and coalesced behind Biden, who ended up winning the nomination. Do you think that's likely to happen here? And if you think that, the anti-Mamdani forces are going to coalesce around one candidate, who do you think it's most likely to be? Eric Adams?
I think it'll be Adams. Because, Ackman and the other rich people already said, sorry, Cuomo, we're not backing you again. Now, Curtis Sliwa, the Republican, he's he was known, he had this, citizen patrol. What were they called? They were in the subway. They all wore red berets. Why can't I remember this? This is terrible.
I remember them from my days in New York, and I can't remember that name.
I can't remember the name. That's awful. But, Republican politics in New York City doesn't really exist. You get Democrats who move right to get those votes. So Sliwa is, and the fact that the Republicans had nobody to offer except Sliwa tells you that, Adams apparently was going to seek the Republican nomination, so they don't care.
So the Guardian Angels, isn't that
that's
the name?
It. Thank you so much.
I knew I recognized Silva's name from somewhere. I lived in New York City in the 90s. Uh-huh. This guy is closely affiliated with the Guardian Angels, isn't he? Isn't that?
Yeah, that was him.
That was him. That was the dude.
He founded the Guardian Angels. He was right. And this is the second time running for office. I
always thought these guys were communists because they were covered in red, but sorry.
It was funny. It was during when there was more crime in the subway, and I would see them occasionally. I don't know what kind of impact they had, but he was kind of a folk hero in that sense. But he's not a factor not going to be a factor in this race. But yes, they, and many Democrats, ordinarily you win the Democratic primary, other Democrats say they'll endorse you. Governor has not endorsed him. Senator Schumer has not endorsed him. The other Senator Gillibrand not only did not endorse him, but made various Islamophobic comments, claimed he was an anti-Semite, and people claims he said things he hasn't said. It's a measure of his success, but it is like Bernie Sanders in 2020. The Democratic Party establishment does not want him. They do not want anyone to to express any political views that are even a tiny bit to the left. That is their fear, that someone can win who they don't want. And they don't want him, and hence the attacks on him. Now, there's a tiny scandal. It's just a day. I shouldn't call it a scandal. Someone hacked into Columbia University's system. Mamdani applied to Columbia as a young man and apparently listed himself as African American, which generally means people like me, Black people, who are, descended from enslaved people. Now, he was born in Uganda. His mother is Mira Nair, the filmmaker. And his father, I can't remember his father. Is it Mahmoud Mamdani? I can't remember his father. I hope I'm not getting his wrong. His father is a scholar, leftist scholar. And at any rate, apparently he listed himself as African American. So somebody hacks into Columbia's system. The New York Times prints this and promises the hacker that they will not reveal their identity. Now, and the New York Times is playing a very disgraceful role. They didn't really endorse anybody. And you would think they would just get behind the Democrats. Right? It's supposed to be a Democratic newspaper, right? So they're part of this hatchet job against Mamdani, letting some anonymous hacker reveal something about him and thousands of other people who applied to Columbia University. I mean, but the liberal class is terrified. They are terrified of, the right wing. It's not just the Trumpian MAGA people. It's these liberal elites who are right wing, who go along with Trump, who, with the law firms who sign these agreements with him, the colleges who go along with him, who fire the president, the University of Virginia, prestigious school. They just forced their president to resign last week because someone said he was pushing DEI policies, diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. And any MAGA person with a grudge now is very powerful, and they can say somebody should be fired, and they get fired. So these trustees and these rich people who are supposed to be so influential, they don't stand up to anything. So that was, and the story broke late yesterday afternoon. So that's what I know right now.
Okay. So I'd like to switch to foreign policy now. Margaret, we have been watching this endless kabuki theater about ceasefire this and ceasefire that, and will Netanyahu accept this? And, has he in fact accepted it? And is Trump pressuring him? Was Biden pressuring him? This has been going on for 21 months of absolute horror. And it just seems like through all of this, theatrical display, the situation on the ground gets worse and worse for the Palestinian people by the day. So now we have the latest installment of what I regard as a kabuki theater. Although I'm starting to think that maybe this time, for a practical reason, there might be some seriousness behind it. So Trump is now saying that he's gotten Netanyahu to agree to a ceasefire, and the proposal has been put to Hamas. And reportedly, I checked about an hour ago, Hamas has said that it's in consultations with other Palestinian factions about this ceasefire proposal. So at least it seems that it's not so ridiculous that it's being rejected out of hand.
Right.
They are taking it seriously, apparently. Do you know, have you been able to glean any information about the terms of this proposal? And whether you have or you haven't been able to do that, do you think that maybe for extraneous, circumstantial reasons, for the situation that Israel now finds itself in, that maybe this is serious and that Trump may finally be applying the pressure that he's always been capable of applying to bring this horror to an end?
It's so hard to say, because when Trump first came in, it looked like there actually was an agreement, was there not? That yes. Some of the Gulf Arab states were going to, and Egypt were going to rebuild Gaza. And that lasted for, a week or so? So it's so hard.
It was about, Israel never really stopped killing people. It just reduced dramatically the number of people it was killing. But it did, I think, last for about 6 weeks.
6 weeks, okay.
Yeah.
But then it was like it never happened, and it was business as usual, starving people. That's just so cruel to starve. First of all, deliberately to make sure that people go hungry, and then when they turn up to get food, they're being shot by the IDF. Um, but anyway, there's so many. We could go on and on and on talk about these atrocities. It's not clear to me. I wonder if it's tied to Iran, because Netanyahu is coming back to Washington to talk to Trump. Their plan for regime change in Iran failed, but they have not given up. Israel wants that. The U.S. wants that. So maybe they think, well, we can't do, Gaza and Iran at the same time. I don't know. It's like I feel like I have to, if I was an evil person, what would I be thinking now? So it can be hard to figure out. But we've seen this movie, so many times, and so I'm not sure. I hope anything that's going to keep the people of Gaza from being terrorized the way they are, I think would be a good thing. But you never know with Israel or with the U.S. It's hard to know who controls whom sometimes. So I want to be optimistic, but given the past history, it's difficult for me to do that.
Yeah, there's a practical reason why I think maybe this could be real, and that is that the Trump administration reportedly stopped the delivery of certain key munitions to Ukraine, including in particular Patriot air defense missiles, which are needed desperately by Israel as well. And it occurred to me that maybe the weapon stocks of the United States are getting so low that Trump is being told by people in the Pentagon, you got to stop all of these wars going on, at least for several months, so that we can resupply our military forces, because we are in a perilously vulnerable situation. I mean, what do you make, whether or not this is related to whether or not this means that the ceasefire proposal is real? What do you make about the fact that the Trump administration has apparently blocked the delivery of some of these key weapons to Ukraine? Do you think this is just a practical concern at the Trump administration, or do you think this signals a shift in his views about the desirability of continuing this proxy war in Ukraine?
Well, he was never fully in favor of it. Someone said, I thought it was very funny, Israel is the wife and Ukraine is the girlfriend. So the wife ultimately will win out. Israel's first. Israel is their first priority. They do not, the U.S. cannot. This is interesting to me as someone who lives in this country where we have, as we were just discussing, almost $1 trillion in military spending. Apparently, they spent a lot of what they had in the so-called 12-day war. And they're short on, it also speaks to the equipment, the huge amount of military equipment that's been given to Ukraine over the past 3 years. And they can't keep up, as you put it. So Ukraine is out. Lest we forget, they had that strange, funny meeting in the Oval Office with Zelensky and Trump actually getting into an argument. But Trump was never in favor. Although Trump is not being honest either about Ukraine, they want a pause. They don't want to address Russia's concerns, Russia's years-long request for some kind of a security agreement. Trump doesn't want to do that. He just wants a pause, like they had in Syria, and nobody forgot that. That pause kept people in place, and then there's a coup, and Syria falls to these jihadists that the West had been backing. So Russia's like, there's no pause. We want to talk about a security agreement, and if not that, we're going to keep fighting. And they want to just hand it off to the Europeans, who, in their infinite delusions, think it is in their interest to continue this war against Russia. So, but all that to say, Ukraine is going to be the loser here, And I think that is a big factor in all of Trump decision making, is to help Israel. Israel is first. Ukraine is not his priority, and so I think you're correct. That could be part of what's happening here.
Right. Well, let us hope so, Margaret. I know it's pained us all very deeply. I'm sure you've been an outspoken critic of U.S. policy towards the Palestinian people, as have I. And for the sake of their children, I hope that finally we can bring this horror show to an end. I really very much appreciate you taking time out on July 4th to speak with us on Reason to Resist, and try not to get too celebratory on this.
Well, so far I don't have a plan, but who knows? That could change. I thank you so much for having me back. I love being on with you, so thank you.
And again, people can find the principal place where they can find your work is Black Agenda Report. Is that right?
blackagendareport.com, and I'm on X as Freedom Ride Blog is my handle.
Excellent. Thanks again, Margaret, and happy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
And I'm signing off from Canada on July 4th, 2025.